The thing that is interesting to most people in there, who, especially ones who are, old people now, because they remember them.
You can say it. It's okay.
They remember them when they were a kid. But Captain Video, Space Patrol, and Tom Corbett, there were almost 3,000 episodes of those three shows on from 1949 to 1955. And, it was must-see viewing for, most kids.
Right, a lot of kid viewing. I thought it was interesting when you recount in this book that it was a big thing early in the 50s, well, starting, let's say, late in the 40s. But then here comes 1955, boom. The genre is the sci-fi, and a lot of it was kid stuff. Mm-hmm. But the TV had spent a lot of time, you said 3,000 shows and all that. So it was all over TV in the early days of TV when you had limited networks and all that. Mm-hmm. But then comes 55, and it's all Westerns.
Yeah.
And the sci-fi is gone.
Yeah, the three big space shows just stopped.
And that's the way it went until Twilight Zone, or what?
Well, there were a couple shows that went on, that were on. There was Science Fiction Theater, which gets mentioned in Back to the Future, but that was an anthology show that was, kind of dry because everything was allegedly based on things that were, possible. Like, there was one episode where people saw this car driving around all on its own in the desert, and they thought it was haunted or something, and it turned out to be that it was a self-driving car, which, of course, they now allegedly have.
Yeah.
And, there was another one where, the scientist who was working on something, don't remember exactly what, but he was about ready to die, and one of his friends had developed an artificial heart, and they put it in him to,
Now, your book, and we're talking with Alan Morton about the golden age of telefantasy. First of all, this is the first in a series.
Yeah.
What's coming next?
The 60s.
The 60s, with shows like?
Star Trek, Bewitched, the first few seasons of Doctor Who, I Dream of Jeannie, and, Twilight Zone. Twilight Zone, although it started, in the fall of 1959, it's, I'm counting it as a 60s show because all but, a handful of episodes were on then.
Is that coming up soon, or when do you publish?
Well, after it gets finished, most of the stuff in the 60s book and a lot of it in the 50s one have been reprinted from a book I did back in the 90s without any pictures in it of shows from 46 to 96.
And we should mention, this is radio, so you have to take my word for it, but a lot of pictures.
Over 300. And a lot of them, there's more pictures in that show, like from Captain Video, than there are episodes that exist, which is, one of the travesties of TV history is almost the entire network of almost the entire output of the DuMont television network, which was on from 46 to 56, doesn't exist anymore.
Gone, yeah.
And, there's a few things that do exist, like, Jackie Gleason, character of Ralph Cramden, first appeared in sketches on DuMont, and he got copies of all his shows. And in the 80s, these are the Lost Honeymooners episodes, which had people all upset because things that they mentioned in those episodes doesn't jive with what was in the later ones.
I thought it was interesting. In your book, you mentioned this, that people who have seen that episode of The Honeymooners think it was a made-up thing, that Captain Video, and they're wearing their tin.
Oh, yeah, that was the first episode of the classic 39, which, Jackie Gleason was, wise in that he figured that people would want to see these again. And most people just know of DuMont not as a TV network, but on the end credits to Honeymooners, it says produced on the DuMont Electrocam system, which was basically a very innovative thing that they started in late 54, early 55, where it was a video camera and a film camera mounted next to each other, and they would be, while the live TV signal was going out, they would be recording the same image on film and, through a variety of things that would be marked so that they could edit it later, because before that, when you see old TV shows, a lot of times it flickers a lot and, it just doesn't look good because those were preserved by taking a camera and pointing it at a TV screen and recording the episodes. Same thing on I Love Lucy. Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball paid to have it made on film, in exchange for rights to reruns, and they're still getting rerun.
We still know about them.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, the shows that you mentioned in here, many are gone for all time, but you still can see some of those.
yeah.
Tales of Tomorrow is
Yeah.
one I've seen a couple of episodes.
Yeah,
of.
about half of those still exist, and they may or may not be in public domain, but the copies aren't real good. I think part of the reason those exist is in the 50s, they took a good chunk of the episodes and sold them as reruns to TV stations because Tales of Tomorrow was on from 51 to 53. And in the early ages of TV, in 1949, I believe, or late 48, the FCC said no more TV stations can be built, and that because they needed to figure out, well, how is color TV going to work, and are we going to have UHF stations only, VHF stations, or a mix? Peoria's sort of lucky, and well, they didn't have TV before 1953. WEEK, which was on Channel 43 then, came on
Right.
70 years ago, but they got lucky in that Peoria didn't have any VHF stations because generally a VHF station would come on the air in a city that had, or a UHF station would come on in a city that had a VHF one, and then it would just wither and die because TVs couldn't pick it up.